it is free money and you have to
Yep.
take advantage of it.
I always tell clients we've gotten through 100% of all of the challenges and crises and events we've been through in this country.
Spending money has become way too convenient, and I think it's caused all of us to be over consumers, to buy things that we don't need just because they're so easy to get.
Money can, to a certain extent, buy happiness in the sense that it can buy us experiences and it can buy us, a certain sort of lifestyle. So I'm not one of these people who says that money can't buy happiness. Hello, welcome back.
Hello, good to see you.
Great to see you too. We are both cheesing, everybody. If you
Yes.
can't see us, hopefully you can hear the cheesing through the microphones, because welcome to episode 50. Woo! Graffiti, confetti, all the things. Oh my gosh, we're so excited to be here with you all always, but especially today for this milestone episode. Welcome back to Living Richly with Curo. My name is Ann McCabe. I am the CEO and a partner here at Curo Private Wealth, and I'm joined for the past 49 episodes with my amazing partner, Atricia.
Hello, I'm Atricia Roberts, COO and a partner here at Curo. Thanks for hanging around with us for 49 weeks.
I know. We were just talking about how we can't believe it's been 50 and we have been delivering episodes every week for the past 49 weeks anyway. So thank you for tuning in. If you're new, welcome. If you have been an OG listener or watcher since episode 1, welcome back. Thank you so much for all the support, the feedback that we're getting. It is really incredible and we're having a fun time. So we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. I'm excited about the year to come.
Me too. So for today's episode, we thought we would get a little personal with y'all. For our milestone number 50, we are going to talk more about our money journeys. So we will get into that in a moment. Our goal always on the podcast and in our practice at Curo is to educate, inspire, and empower our clients and our listeners on their financial journeys. And we thought it would be fun to just share a little bit more about our biggest money mistakes and the biggest money lessons and things like that we have experienced in our lives. So we will get into that, very much recognizing that everybody has a money journey and a money story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I like to talk to new clients about because it gives you such a great perspective on the way they view money, why they treat money the way they do, or save or spend money. A lot of it starts with, the way they grew up with money and their understanding of it. So this conversation gets a little intimate today, but I'm excited to do it with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. So before we do that, let's do a little A-team catch up. So how's life, Atricia? Nothing is going on right now in the markets.
We've just kind of been very quiet around here at the office.
Kind of boring.
Looking for things to do. Not. The last, let's call it 4 business days even. I wouldn't even say week. The last 4 business days have been this whirlwind of activity. It's already a busy time of year for us, that last week before tax season, but then you mix in the recent market volatility and clients, and not just clients, family and friends freaking out, and everybody wants, a conversation and has questions. So you and I both, I think, have been feeling it over the last few days. But outside of that, I think things are okay.
Is there anything outside of that?
Right. I know. Like, it feels so all-consuming, but I'm trying to think of like my life outside of here. And nothing really new to report, but things are good. We finally got a break in the rainy weather for a couple of days. Some sunshine always feels nice here in the DC Metro in the spring. My allergies are starting to flare up though, so you probably can hear a little bit of the nasaliness in my voice today. I apologize for that. But other than tariffs and taxes and allergies, I'm doing all right.
Tariff taxes and Trump. What
Tariffs,
more?
taxes, and Trump. But other than that, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
How about you?
What is there outside of that?
Right.
No, yeah, there's literally nothing in my life right
Yeah.
now outside I'm even, like, at the dinner table with my kids and Wally, like, talking, my oldest
Yes.
goalie last night at the dinner table was like, "What is a recession, and how do we know we're in a recession? Are we already in a recession? And what are these tariffs?" And it was, my 7-year-old was sitting there like, "I don't even know what the heck you guys are talking about," but, it does feel, yeah, all-consuming right now, but as we were talking about on Monday when we had our all-team meeting, I think it's really important anytime you're in a position, and this goes for any of our listeners or clients who are in a position where people are looking to you for advice and you're in a very challenging, very scary, very uncertain time. It's especially important for us to take care of ourselves and practice really good self-care because we cannot give from an empty cup. So we have to make sure, as hard as it is, because we're busy, anytime market volatility increases and the questions increase, it just means longer hours for us, which means less hours for things like self-care. But it's really, really important for us to all remember to take good care of ourselves so that we can be the best versions of ourselves we can be for those who are relying on us. So, um, yeah. So, whether you're in our industry or in some other position where people rely on you, please make sure to take care of yourself. And this too shall pass, y'all. We've gotten through I always tell clients we've gotten through 100% of all of the challenges and crises and events we've been through in this country, which have been many. 100% of the time we've gotten through them. So I don't expect anything different this time. It's just we have to be patient and get through it. We
Yeah.
have to go through the mess.
Yeah. And turn off the noise. Well, I'll throw that one in too. If it's too
Yeah.
much, if it's affecting you mentally, if it's all you can think about, just turn it off for a while. It's not going to change anything.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. All right. So let's get
Ooh.
into our topic du jour, which is our money journeys. And
Mhm.
so let's start with thinking back for both of us to our earliest memories of money and how did our families talk about money or handle money? And Atricia, I'm going to put you on the spot to kick us off to talk about like just early childhood memories of money.
Yeah, so growing up, I always think of it as people who came from allowance households and people who didn't. I did not grow up in an allowance household. I did not get an allowance for doing chores. For my parents, that was just mandatory part of living here, right? That helps you cover your rent, right? To help keep things tidy and clean. So I didn't earn an allowance, but I would get maybe some money or some sort of a gift for good grades. So that was, I think, my earliest connection to being able to make money or have money. It was, rewards for good grades. So if I got a great report card, I might get some cash, or my dad would take me to the music store and let me buy, a record. It was, vinyls back then. I'm an old lady. But so that's, I think, my earliest memories was like the way I had money, right? The way I had money. In my household in general, though, it was one of those things that I wouldn't say we didn't talk about because I never felt like money was a secret in my house. But I don't know that I ever actually got officially sat down and explained, how many things work. But I do have very vivid memories of like my dad sitting at the kitchen table with, bills and writing checks and keeping a check register. I remember even sometimes helping him with that check register, let me write the name of the company and the amount and do the math to balance it. I also remember being able to go to the ATM for my parents. And I think I remember it because I was so excited about it. Like the first time, like we would pull up to the bank and like my mom was like, "Oh, go to the ATM and get cash." So like I knew their PIN numbers and I could get the receipt and see the money and I would count the money and make sure that it was right. So while it wasn't secretive in my house, I don't know that I ever had a money conversation with my family. But just as context, I didn't come from money. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family, but there was never a time where I felt like we were poor. When I think about it now in my adult brain, I realize that we probably didn't have as much as I thought we had at the time. But I think my parents did a really good job of making both my sister and I feel well cared for. We still had hobbies. I went to ballet and I was in Girl Scouts and I went to private school for a little while early on, like go up to about second grade. So I don't know. I think that my relationship with money has never come from a place of lack, right? It's never felt like I didn't have it, but I also didn't see it or feel it in abundance, right? Money had to be earned, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So very similar for me. I don't number one, we never had money conversations.
Hmm.
But and I never felt like we were lacking, but I also definitely didn't feel like, we were Donald Duck
Right.
swimming in the pools pools of cash. That was not. I remember like seeing that cartoon and being like, that's definitely not us. So my parents got divorced when I was 5, and my siblings and I'm one of 6 kids, so I have a very large family. But my 4 older siblings are, quite substantially older than my younger brother and I. But, I was basically raised by a single mom. My dad was around, but my mom definitely took the brunt of raising, a lot of children. And so very similarly, I never felt like there was lack, but I also didn't feel like, we never took like amazing vacation, not never, but very infrequently did we take amazing vacations. I think about the sorts of vacations that we try to give our children now and the experiences that we try to give our children now. And there's just absolutely no way that my mom could have provided those sorts of trips for us. The earliest memory I have of something tangible with money was my mom did take me to the bank to open a passbook savings account. And I wish they still had these passbook savings accounts, because I remember every time I'd get so excited when I would save my money and she would take me to the bank. And every time, for those of you who don't know what a passbook savings account is, which is very possible, every time you go to make a deposit in your savings account, you would take this passbook. It looked literally like a passport book, and they would stick it in this printer, and they would not only print the deposit that you made, but they would also print the interest that you've earned since the last time you made a deposit. Now, when I say interest, I swear it was probably 2 cents. Like, it was not a lot of money at all. But the fact that, number 1, I was seeing like my money making money, it was starting to work for me. And then just to be able to see like tangibly the benefits of saving, that I remember was really exciting. And I couldn't tell you how old I was when that happened, but the other very distinct memory I have was actually when I was a teenager, and my mom gave me her credit card to go shopping with my friends, and I spent a lot of money. Like, looking back, I'm horrified.
Even now.
Even now, yeah, like, I could tell you, I can close my eyes and visualize Springfield Mall in Springfield, Virginia. I can, like, visualize the store. I can visualize the jean section that I was, like, shopping at. I bought it, like, I don't know if it was a designer pair of jeans, but it was, like, the most expensive pair of jeans I've ever bought at that time. And I remember getting home and, like, telling my mom how much I spent, and she was not happy with me, but I also distinctly remember, like, she never gave me a budget. And I remember thinking that was so weird. Like, you're giving your credit card to a teenage girl going shopping with her friends, and you didn't give me a budget. And I remember, like, almost being a little bit disappointed in her for like not putting boundaries
Right.
on me.
Mom, this is irresponsible.
Exactly. And it's just so funny because I think I mean, number 1, I did spend the money, so it's not like
Right.
in hindsight, I was not the most responsible I could have been, but I just remember being, like, disappointed in the fact that she did not put any sorts of controls on my
Mm,
spending. So that is a
that's
very clear and
interesting.
distinct memory that I have,
Yeah.
and I can tell you I was definitely in high school. Can't tell you exactly how old I was, but
No, it's very interesting that you had even that assessment at that time. Like, why wouldn't you give me boundaries with this?
what were you thinking? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe I talked about this in our first episode, sort of what led us to this industry. But my sister and I also lost our parents very young. And my mother passed away first when I was about 15 years old. My sister was 8, and we were living with our dad. I mean, of course, we'd always lived with him. Our parents were together when my mom died. But then, of course, that changed a little bit of the dynamic of money for us because there was I hate to use the word windfall, but there was a windfall because of it. And I remember selling our old house, moving to a different neighborhood. So also, I always joke with my sister that she had a very different upbringing than I did because she had the suburban life upbringing that I didn't have. Because I mean, I think we moved when I was right before my senior year in high school. So I only lived in our new house a year before I went off to school. But I also have shared, I believe, that lots of the decisions my dad made after our mom passed away when he worked with an advisor completely changed the financial trajectory of not only my family's life, but mine and my sister's lives. It continues to impact us to this day in a positive way. And the power of that has always had an effect on me, right? Like just how those decisions in that short amount of time can make life just be completely different from the way that you've known it. So that had a real impact on me as well from a money position and the way I think of money. And I now view money, I think, as a tool, right? It's a tool to help change lives. And I know that seems probably a little bit altruistic, but that's the way I see it. Like if you make really good decisions, then you can make life be better than it was before.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we talk about that a lot with clients. Like money is a means to an end. It's a
Right.
tool. It's why anytime we sit down with a prospective client, we spend a lot of time trying to
Mhm.
understand their money journey and their goals and their concerns, what's keeping them up at night and what they're trying to do with this money. And then we talk about the numbers. Then we obviously
Right.
need to know what the numbers look like to be able to fund the lifestyle. But yeah, I 100% agree that money is a tool to be able to give us the lifestyle that we want now and in the future, and possibly even, legacy, like you were
Yeah.
talking about with your parents.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. You ready to go on to our next question? This
Yeah,
one's a
let's do
this
it.
one's a this one was the easiest one, I think, of the ones to answer for me because it's very clear for
Yeah.
me. But I'll ask you first. What was your first big money mistake?
There have been a number of them, but I think probably the most impactful one is my ex-husband and I bought a house in 2005, which for those of you who were not around, the stock market peaked in 2007, right before the financial crisis occurred, but the real estate market actually peaked in 2005. So first big mistake is I bought real estate at the absolute top of the market before the bottom fell out. But even more important than that, because we don't believe that anybody can time anything perfectly. The more important mistake that we made is we were living in a perfectly fine townhouse. It was just the two of us. We did not have children yet. And I'm going to throw my ex under the bus a little bit. He really wanted the bigger house and, wanted to kind of push that and wanted to get into a house that we could grow into with the kids. And that was not as much something that I thought we were ready for. And I also remember, crunching the numbers and seeing what a large mortgage payment we were about to get ourselves into and, knowing we could afford it at the time on paper. But if anything were to happen, it was going to be really, really tight. And unfortunately, my ex, who had been the breadwinner, at this stage in our relationship, his business went down. And so all of a sudden, we had this massive mortgage and again, a house like way bigger than we needed. And I just remember being really mad at myself that I didn't kind of like push back hard enough. I mean, I expressed concern and didn't think we needed to do this at the time, but I in hindsight should have like put my foot down and said like this is not necessary. This is not something that we need to do right now and it's not going to be a financially responsible decision. And that mortgage payment and that house were just, oh my God, it was like shackles. It was just very, very stressful to make it all happen. And then, of course, we were underwater massively because of what happened in the real estate market. So, in hindsight, I wish I would have just pushed back, a little bit more and said, why don't we just wait a couple more years? Why don't we wait until we actually have some babies and need
Right.
need more space because we were in a perfectly perfectly fine house.
Yeah. And how many times have we witnessed that story? I mean, obviously you in your personal life, but we see it in clients. I've seen it with family and friends where people, I also think too that there's this idea that, and maybe it's the way we're brought up culturally in this country, that marriage and home ownership are almost like steps 1 and 2 of building an adult life. And I think many people hold on to this idea of having the house with the yard and the white picket fence. And not that it's a bad thing to want to have, but home ownership is very, very expensive, right? And can be if you're not completely prepared for it. So, I mean, I think it's great of you to share that story, but we see it. We see people who live house poor, right? And because again, the numbers sometimes make sense in theory. And then when it's time to actually start writing the checks, it's a very different experience.
Yeah. If your only expense is your mortgage, then go for it,
Go
right? But
for
like
it.
that's not life. There are many other things that our incomes have to fund. And,
Yeah.
if our incomes go down, we lose a business is a massive decrease in income. You're in a pickle. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you can't sell the house, right? That was the other
Right.
problem. Like we were so underwater that we couldn't just sell the house. So we had to figure out how to make it work. So those
Yeah.
were those were some very challenging times for sure.
Yeah. How long were you in that house, if you don't mind me asking?
No, so we bought it in 2005 and we sold it after we got divorced, which would have been in 2021. So,
Okay.
thankfully we were able to sit tight and
Right.
let it come back. But we did not make a lot of money on it at all, despite the fact, that we owned it for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
All right, your turn.
my first big money mistake, two very simple words, credit card.
Mm.
When I was in college, and I don't think they allow this anymore, but on campuses, college campuses, a few years back, credit card companies would come out, they would set up a table, they would offer you like free pizza to do a credit card application. And I remember Discover was on campus, like right outside of my freshman dorm. And I remember doing the application and then calling my dad and asking him, like, is this okay that I'm doing this? And then now I kind of feel like the way you said to your mom, like he should have told me no. Right. He should have said, yes, this is an absolutely bad idea. But my dad, being the open-minded person that he was like, no, you're an adult and you can start, building credit and you can be responsible, but only use the card for emergencies. And I'm like, "Okay,
LOL.
got it. Okay, got it, dad." And the emergencies became Gap jeans and, restaurants on Friday, TGI Fridays with the friends and lunch in the food court. Everything then became an emergency. And I actually went back. I'm trying to think. I feel like I found something about that card, and the APR on that card had to been at like 25 or 26%. It was insane. And racking up that debt with no real income to pay it down, that credit card haunted me for years. I tell people literal years, like way past graduation, way past. I think I had even started my job at Merrill, still paying down that Discover card finally. So that was my first big money mistake. And of course, that had a ripple effect into everything I was trying to do building a life, right? An auto loan was more expensive. I think I even needed like a cosigner on my first auto loan because my credit was so bad at that point. So that taught me a huge lesson about the impact of credit cards and bad debt. And luckily enough, my sister is almost 7 years younger than me. So I was able to use a lot of that experience and tell her no the way I feel like my dad should have told me. And when she wanted credit cards in college, it was like, absolutely not. Absolutely, you will not. And that lesson, I mean, I learned a huge lesson there. And again, I have excellent credit now, but it took me so many years, like past the point of doing that first application my freshman year to work myself out of that hole. It was terrible. I was like, I will never do it again. I would never do it again. So now I am the most responsible credit card user. I'm paying balances off in full and I'm, only using them to maximize rewards. And because I understand the pain that caused in my financial life, and I will never, ever let it happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, this is the important thing about any mistake, but certainly money mistakes, right? Is
Yeah.
we have to make them. Or in the case of your sister, hopefully she can learn from your money mistakes, right? But this is how we learn. And the good news is you weren't 45 going
Right.
into credit card debt and trying to pay it off at that point. You were in your 20s. And, the more painful those things are, the more they stick with you
Oh,
and the more
absolutely.
they really force like permanent behavior change, which is what you need, what
Yeah.
one needs. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yep.
one was
Ugh,
tough.
that
Yeah.
that
It was
does.
tough,
Yeah.
but it was, I mean, lesson learned.
Learned. Yep. Lesson
We
learned.
can put that one in the books.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What about the flip side of that? What was
Mhm.
your best money decision that you ever made?
Okay, so this one is gonna sound. I hope it. I'll try to give some context, so it doesn't sound like I'm communicating it wrong. But I think the best money decision that I made, at least so far, was getting back into this business. Was a
Amen. Sorry. Could you just one more time for the back of the room?
was getting back into this business, and I don't say it in a way because it's like, "Oh, I'm making so much money and I have this potential to make so much money." I don't mean it in that way, and I hope I'm not communicating in that way, but you guys have probably heard me tell the story about my journey in this business, and after I left Merrill Lynch in 2008, I vowed to never be in this business again, and I did nonprofit work, and then I got back into financial services on the banking side, where I met the original founder of the BRW legacy practice, who basically convinced me to come back into the business after I vowed to never do it again. But that one career shift, again, we talk about changing trajectories, right? Because I think what happened was not only did it position me in a place to earn more money, right? We always say income helps, right? Income helps help you do better. But it also, I think, brought me back to where I should have been. And it was the first time from a career perspective that I felt like this is the work that I should be doing. And then having that fuel, right? Having that passion to say, I want to do this work. I want to do great work for clients. I want to grow this business. I want to grow this practice has shown its way through my career since 2017. And because of that growth, it has, of course, allowed me to earn more income and to do other things and save more money. But I think finding myself back in the place where I'm doing the work that I should be doing has also helped because not the career that I've selected is also one that fuels me personally and emotionally, right? And I feel that passion to do it, and I think that just helps me be better. So I hope I'm communicating that well, but I mean, yeah, to this day, I do think that that decision is, of course, been one of the best money decisions that I've made.
Yeah. Well, and I think this time around, because both of us had been with what are called wirehouses, which think
Mhm.
like Merrill Lynch, UBS, the big, brokerage firms. And having a career at a wirehouse is extremely different than the careers that we have in an independent firm, right? It's just a
Yes.
completely different, and especially your experience being in Southern Georgia at Merrill
Right.
Lynch, just a completely different experience with a lot of challenges. But I think one of the most, challenging thing was you weren't really able to run, your own practice and run the
Right.
firm and help people in the way that you wanted to. Whereas now we run the firm, we get to decide the clients we want to work with, we get to decide how we want to show up in the community, who we want to be, what our values are, and it's just a completely different situation that brings more purpose and fulfillment to our careers versus just clocking in and
Right.
selling some stocks or whatever. It's just a completely different, a different animal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think about it, had I stayed at the bank, and not that I didn't have career opportunity there, it just would have been a very different and a much slower path. I mean, for anybody who's ever worked in a bank, you understand how much they love middle management, right? There are people who are middle managers for all of their career, and especially in big banks like the one that I worked for. And my career probably would have moved a lot slower. It would have been a lot more frustrating in that position. So I think back on that too, like in making that decision really helped move me in a much better direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I obviously tell you this frequently, but so grateful that you decided to come back to
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
where you belong.
Yeah, I definitely feel, like I'm where I belong, and I'm
Yeah.
happy and privileged to do it with you. So,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
I
you.
know people are
Feel the
probably so
same.
annoyed by us.
I know they're like, oh my God, they're so cheesy. All right. So the best money decision I ever made, I was 19 years old working for a bank as a teller. So I graduated high school and actually started working for a bank. So I worked for a bank all throughout college, actually, as a teller. And my manager, when I was 19, I don't think I definitely didn't set up a 401k when I first started working for the bank. But when about a year in, my manager was like, "Oh, yeah, did you set up a 401k?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm making less than $20,000. No, I did not set up this. I don't even know what a 401k was or how it worked." And he was like, "No, you have to set up a 401k. There's this thing called a match and it's free money and you're dumb for leaving free money on the table." And I was like, "No, you don't understand. I don't have any money." And he was like, "No, you don't understand. You're going to do this." And I'm like, "Okay." So I did. And I remember like going through the investment options with him and he helped me pick I mean, when I tell you I knew nothing, I knew like less than nothing about investing in 401ks and matches. And it really wasn't, it was a percent of a very small amount of income. So it didn't really hurt that much from, my cash flow. But yeah, starting a 401k at the age of 19, that compound interest and just being able to see that account grow I just remember that being like a really powerful experience, and one that, we share, especially anytime we get an opportunity to speak with our clients' kids or grandkids who are just entering the workforce, signing up for that retirement plan and taking advantage of the match is something we always talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. It is free money and you have to
Yep.
take advantage of it to that point. And I probably shouldn't admit this as an advisor, but I never did roll over my Bank of America 401k. So
Mhm.
I still look at it. It's almost like an experiment to me now, though. And
Mhm.
I look at what was actually contributed to it, to what the actual value
Oh,
is
yeah.
of it, and that money has doubled,
Yeah.
right? And I haven't put a dime into it, in the last 8 years. So it's an incredibly powerful tool, and the
Yep.
fact that you did it at 19 is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, again, you have these people in your life who give you advice, who give you guidance along the way. And I just remember being so annoyed with him that he
Yeah.
was like so passionately telling me this is what I need to do. But I'm grateful for him,
Yeah.
grateful for him now.
Yeah.
Shout out
Shout
to
out to
Mark,
that.
wherever you are. Wherever you are. All right. So let's talk about what
Mhm.
lessons have stayed with us through the course of
Mhm.
our lives. So, what are some of the lessons? You already mentioned never, ever, 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 ever being in credit card debt again. But what else? Any other lessons that have stuck with you?
Yeah, I think there's been a few of them that I feel like are kind of like my money mantras. One is about giving, right? I feel like, and I've always grown up with this being taught that to whom much is given, much is required. And I try to keep that in the back of my mind that I want to, as I am blessed, be a blessing to other people. So I try to always think of that. That lesson sticks with me. I think it also fits into, I think you and I just talked about this offline, about that money flow, right? Like you can't hold on to money as tightly. You have to be willing and to let it go sometimes so that it flows back to you. So I think those two things tie in. I also have really held on to the idea of planning for an emergency. And I tell people all the time, having been through some of the experiences that I have in my years on the planet here, and always knowing that the worst could happen, right? And I think it also makes me a little bit cynical and pessimistic, but I think it's just about experience and knowing like sometimes the things that you think, oh, that will never happen, sometimes they do, right? And the better prepared you are for it, the better you are. So I also think that lesson about, or that feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop, also makes me very cautious with money as well. So I'm always very concerned about having enough cash, having enough emergency reserve, not spending too frivolously. I mean, the number of times I've talked to you and agonized over purchasing decisions, right? Because in my mind, it's like, oh, you're going to spend this money and then something's going to happen and you're going to need it. But that's something that stayed with me is always, or when you can, as often as possible, be prepared for the what if, be prepared for the worst case scenario from a money, perspective. So I think so those are some of the things that just kind of always constantly play in the back of my mind. They're things that I try to remind myself about. And especially as you advance and you start to earn more money and save more money, you start to see things differently. Like I think I shared with you, I remember for my 13th birthday, all I wanted to do was eat at Red Lobster. It's like, where you want to go for your birthday? It's Red Lobster. Now my birthdays are, I want to go to Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah.
So life has changed, right?
Yeah.
But
The
I
amount of
al
money that you spend at Red Lobster is, like, not the tip on your bills anymore.
Exactly, but also remembering those times, right? Staying
Mhm.
grounded in that time when there was a time when you couldn't do those things. It makes me appreciative, it makes me grateful, it makes me want to be better and do better for other people, but it also keeps me sane and saying, "This may not, be like this for forever," right? So
Yeah.
you better start preparing for the potential rainy day.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Alright.
So similar. So back to the lessons, I would say the probably the simplest lesson that has stuck with me, and I'm really trying to teach this to my kids too, is pay yourself first. So I don't necessarily think that everybody has to have a very strict budget. And if you say you're going to spend $500 on groceries, you can't spend $505 on groceries. I actually think that there are other ways to budget and manage your cash flow. But I 100% believe that paying yourself first, which means sticking money away to save first before you spend, is really, really important. And as long as you're doing that, and that is an appropriate amount, and you've crunched the numbers and you know how much that needs to be, then once you save first, whatever you want to spend the rest of the discretionary income, discretionary cash flow on is like you do you, right? And all of us have different things that are important to us to spend money on, but I do 100% believe in paying yourself first. And I give my kids an allowance. We've talked about this before, I think an episode. I don't believe in paying my children to do chores, so they have chores and those are their responsibilities, but I do want them to learn how to manage money, so I give them allowance, but I make them save right off the top 10% of their allowance into a savings account before they, so that's money that they technically are earning, but they can't spend it, because it is something I'm really trying to drive home in my kids too, for them to be good savers. But the next question we were going to ask is, how do your personal experiences show up in the advice? And you and I are very similar in the sense that we have been through very different challenges in our lives, but we've been through some pretty traumatic, life altering, situations. And I am 100% the same way as you, in that, not that I'm expecting for, things to be bad all the time, but things can happen and things do happen. And as much as we're planners and we have a vision for the future and we have our life set out, sometimes things happen. And so to make sure that, I've got enough cash reserve set aside, to make sure that I'm saving for the future, to make sure that I can provide a great life for me and my family and, my children now as well as in the future, is really, really important. And I think, sometimes we'll sit down with clients and we'll talk about things like how much we think they should keep in cash reserves. And I know in the past, I've had some clients push back like, wow, that's a lot of cash to have. But then they've always come back to me when, like, in one situation, I'm remembering a client who lost his job and he came back and he was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for encouraging us to increase our cash reserves, because now we've got months, before I have to worry. And, I remember giving you a little bit of grief about that. And I'm just so grateful that you kind of, stood firm in your advice. So you and I are very similar from that perspective for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and I also had to retrain myself with debt as well because my experience with debt made me very debt averse. And I had to retrain my thinking as an advisor, right, about how debt can be good and beneficial and used as leverage in certain situations. But I am very stern with my clients about getting rid of high interest rate credit card debt. And I think a lot of that is from my own experience. So there's so much of our past, the things we've been through, the lessons we've learned that I see all the time show up in the way I talk to clients about money and the advice that we give.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so let's come to present day. So what
Okay.
is a money mindset you're working on, or a habit that you're working on now that you can share with us?
I'm a pay yourself first person. So I have automatic savings because I don't want to think about it, right? Everything in my life has to be automated at this point. Bills have to be paid automated because if not, I'll just forget because I'm all over the place. But so that is a habit that I've adopted years ago. But one of the other sort of money habits that I'm focusing on personally, and I advise clients of this, is just that being mindful of the income creep, how you start to make more money. So then you naturally start to spend more money, right? Because now you can afford different things. So keeping my arms around that idea, right? Not to get too far over my skis with the decisions that I make about money. And also, I don't want to be one of those advisors. So I always joke that doctors make the worst clients and doctors make the worst patients because they always think they know what's best. So the other thing I try to do is keep an open mind about my own money because I don't want to be the advisor that's a bad planning client. So I always try to be open minded about that. And could things be done differently? Should you be doing things differently? Because I haven't updated an actual budget on paper in a few years. And it's something we force every client we work right? We work with to do to itemize those expenses and see where all the money is going. So that's some of the things I'm trying to remind myself now. Like, don't get too far away from the things that you know works, right? Even in your own personal life. So, like, I force myself now to open up that spreadsheet, look at the itemization of some of my expenses, see where I can cut things back, because that's something that I kind of gotten away from, even though it's something I advise my clients to do all the time. And then the other one, of course, is just to find ways to give back. And we've talked about this too, right? Is to not get so head up my own, you know what, like into my own stuff that I forget about the greater world around me and find ways to show up and be a better part of the community, if that makes sense. So that's some of the things that I'm just working on in my own personal money journey.
Yeah, love those.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, so for me, I'm trying to help my kids understand that money can, to a certain extent, buy happiness in the sense that it can buy us experiences and it can buy us, a certain sort of lifestyle. So I'm not one of these people who says that money can't buy happiness, but in this generation of like, the age of the kids that I'm raising, they're on YouTube all the time. They're constantly being marketed to. They're constantly thinking that they need the new X or Y product to give them happiness, fulfillment, in the case of my teenager, better skin or better hair or whatever. And I feel like I'm swimming upstream against these constant external pressures that are telling them just to spend my money on things constantly. And so, just like we talk with clients, and I try to do this for myself too, to be acutely aware of spending money on things that are aligned with our values and that actually bring us lasting joy. And I think if we think back to a lot of purchases that all of us have made in our lives, we would probably love to go back and unwind those purchases because we thought they would bring us happiness, joy, fulfillment, whatever, and they didn't. It wasn't lasting. And so I'm trying really hard to like in for the case of me and Wally, we believe in spending money on experiences because we believe that those are like lasting memories and that those do, create joy over the long run versus, a new pair of shoes that you don't need or whatever. So just really trying to help, my family, my kids think about money in alignment with what is really important to them and not spend money on things because somebody else is doing it or somebody else is telling them to do it, but to really be super aware of these decisions of how we spend our money. Cause it just feels like people are constantly reaching, right? They're reaching for the dollars. Everybody's trying to get a piece and it's hard, and they're young and yeah. So it's a something that is a challenge and I'm really focused on right now.
Yeah, it's great to help them see that early. I mean, because I
Mhm.
think it's a problem even for adults.
Adults,
I mean,
yeah.
click to buy is probably the worst invention that we've
Yeah,
been given, right?
there's no friction.
You can purchase things right from Instagram. You can purchase things right from TikTok Shop. You don't even have to go to a separate page, right? You don't even have to put in another address to go
No, you don't even have to
find the
type in your
thing.
credit card number anymore. Like, think about when you had to, like, walk down and grab your credit
Right.
card and type the numbers
And the number of
in.
things I haven't bought because I had to go get the credit card, but now
Exactly.
it links
Now
to the digital wallet or something is stored or saved or it's way too convenient. Spending money has become way too convenient, and I think it's caused all of us, right? Not just kids, all of us to be over consumers, to buy things that we don't need, just because they're so easy to get, and we just
Yeah.
accumulate all this stuff. So how do you think they are accepting those lessons? Like, do you see it making a difference, or is it still like every day, like, no, you guys are not getting that. You don't need that.
Well, I mean, part of me giving them their own money is that
Hmm.
they do get to make the choices. And obviously
Okay.
there are boundaries. I don't let them
Right.
spend money on whatever they want. But a lot of times I will let them buy the things and then I'll check in with them, sometimes a week or two later, and they're already kind of over it, and we'll talk about it. We'll have a conversation. And then oftentimes what'll happen, especially with the little one, is he'll spend his money and then a week later he'll see something that he really wants, but he's out of money, right? Like he spent his money already. And so these are all, I'm hoping, like lessons that will stick with them. And these are on, like he spent some extra money on a video game or whatever. Like it's not, we're not talking about a lot of money, but I am hoping that these lessons are sticking with them. But it's a process, it's a journey, and I think it's working, but we're not there,
Yeah,
and I
of
think
course.
it's going to be, yeah, I think it's going to be a long process.
Yeah, and I mean, I think having it young and then growing with it, I think you'll see it start to shift their mindsets.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope so. All right. Well, we want to hear from you all. So let us know what is a turning point in your money journey, or what is the biggest money lesson you've learned so far in your life. Please share those with us on Instagram. Our handle is at Curo Private Wealth, but we love hearing from you. And we may even bring some of those back into a future episode.
Hmm.
We can, certainly talk about some of those. So please make sure to share. Also, send us your questions at podcast@curoprivatewealth.com. If we answer one of your questions on an episode, we will send you an Amazon gift card as a thank you. And be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to this podcast. Give us the likes, the thumbs up. Let us know what you thought. I think for the sake of time,
Hmm.
because this whole episode has been a lot about like takeaways and our experiences, we're probably going to have to wrap it there. Thanks for hanging with us for a little bit longer than we normally do, but we thought this would be a fun, special episode to do with you all. So
Yeah, hope you
thanks
enjoyed
for,
it. Thanks for
yeah,
being
me
around
too.
for 50 episodes.
I know. Thank you so much. We love you guys. We appreciate you. And until next time.
Live richly.
Thanks again for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit from it. Friendly reminder that this is for informational purposes only. For additional information, please visit us at www.curoprivatewealth.com. Until next time, live richly.